Llegó la primavera JCPenney con la última moda. Piezas cómodas y ligeras. Mezcla y combina lo nuevo de tus marcas favoritas y crea looks originales que se acomodan a tu presupuesto. Como las polos de St. John's Bay con un pantalón en algodón o un simple suéter y jeans de A&A. Encuentra el bolso de Liz Claiborne que siempre has querido y sandalias que combinen. Para noches más cálidas, elige pijamas ligeras y frescas de Ambriel. Trae a tu familia y descubran lo nuevo de primavera. JCPenney. Vale la pena.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
I've never met Anthony Mackie, who most recently starred in the latest Captain America, Brave New World movie. I've never met him, never had a chance to interview him. I only know his on-screen persona per se. And I liked him as a talent. I didn't know whether he could carry a movie by himself. And I think he's put a lot of those fears to rest at this point. But I didn't know much about him other than he was from Louisiana, what have you. Didn't know that he had 4 sons until relatively recently. He was on this podcast called the Pivot Podcast, and it's done by Ryan Clark, who's an NFL commentator, and for ESPN. And I learned more about him, his family, his philosophy for raising his 4 sons, more about him than ever before. And that's one thing I do enjoy about the podcast industry, if only because you get to see sides and hear sides of people that you just wouldn't in a press tour where he's promoting a movie or some other project. You get a real sense of who the person is, because in a podcast situation, they talk long enough, they kind of forget that they're talking in a recorded medium. You get to hear what they really think about things, whether they cuss, what they feel about life. And in this case, child rearing. About, 4 or 5 days ago, we told you about how Ben Affleck was taking his son to a sneaker convention. And that's very important. Took his son to a sneaker convention, and Ben Affleck received all sorts of praise for dissuading his son from wanting to buy a pair of $6,000 sneakers. $6,000. And a lot of praise was heaped on Ben Affleck. It's like, yeah. Teach him the value of money and so forth. I said, wait a minute. Just because he said that he wouldn't let his son buy a pair of $6,000 shoes doesn't mean that he would be against $2,000 or $800. And if you saw the video on social media, he was already carrying bags of at least 2 pairs of shoes. They dropped at least $1,000. And I was saying, I've never spent more than $200 on shoes. Not that I couldn't afford more than $200. It was just the principle. It's not something I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on. In comes Anthony Mackie, and this is completely separate and distinct from anything related to Ben Affleck. Listen what he has to say about how he raises his sons.
Captain America is interesting because I try to keep my boys outside of it. Like, I don't want my boys affected by it or even acknowledge the idea of what Hollywood is and what it means to the general populace. Because I want them to find their own path. And we're blessed. Like, we're put in a position where we can afford our kids the best. Mm-hmm. We're in a position where our grandkids, our great-grandkids will be provided for. We weren't like that. Right. I know on the West Bank you wasn't like that.
No doubt.
Yeah, y'all ate, Vienna sausages and poking beans,
I did, though.
That's what I'm saying. But that's up. Real.
Yeah.
That's where we came from. I keep my boys humble. Like, my boys have never had a pair of Jordans.
Did you hear that? Never had a pair of Jordans. We're not talking about the $4,000 sneaker convention Jordans. We're talking like the $200 Jordans.
Like, my boys have never had a pair of Jordans. My boys don't do all that internet fly shit. I'm like your kids. And no, I don't give a f. I could be the biggest star in the world. Do not let me catch you being stupid. Mm-hmm. Do not. And my oldest gets it. My 15-year-old, he tells the other ones, he's like, yo, don't make dad mad. Because once you get one that's right, he gonna straighten the other ones out. Mm-hmm. So it's just that thing of, in the past 20 years, we've been living through the death of the American male.
Uh-oh.
They have literally killed masculinity in our homes and our communities for one reason or another. But I raised my boys to be young men. And however you feel about that, you feel about that. Right. But my boys will always be respectful. They will always say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. No, sir, no, ma'am. They will always say thank you. They will always open a door for a lady. They will always make sure that their mother is taken care and provided for. They will always be men. And that's always since they were 2 years old. Every time I left for a job, I tell my 15-year-old, you're the man of the house. You make sure these doors are locked every night. This alarm is on. You text me or you call me every night before you go to bed and you wake up.
I love that.
Because we're men. If I'm not there to protect, he got to be there to protect. Because you can have all the money in the world, motherfucker climb through the window, that money means nothing.
Right.
You can have all the celebrity in the world, motherfucker jump through the door, that celebrity means nothing.
Yeah.
So you got to have a little guard in there.
I love Anthony Mackie. I'm a fan for life, just off of that. Just off of that.
Yeah, what he is passing down to his sons is the true definition of what I grew up understanding what being a man was about. It is the same values I pass on to my son. It's like, and it brings me great pride anytime I go somewhere and someone interacts with my son. They say, man, your son is really, he is just such a good kid. He's a gentleman. He's kind. He's polite. You know, he looks you in your eye when you shake your hand. And he speaks up, and it just brings me so much joy to know that is because of things that I passed down to him. And I don't know if enough of that is being passed down in households across America. I don't care the race. I don't care what area these kids are from, because it's like I go to any mall, I'm picking my kids up, be at the movie theaters, and you're seeing these young people talking crazy, cursing, acting out. Growing up, it didn't matter if me and my friends were cursing around each other. If someone older came around,
don't do it in front of an adult. No,
it was quiet all that down. And I don't know if enough young men are being taught what it means to be a man. I don't know what happened in society that changed that.
There was so much that I heard in there which was reminiscent of my father. For example, my father was the one who said, you don't leave the house without an undershirt and a belt. You're not fully dressed. As far as presenting yourself to the world, be appropriate in your presentation. When a woman comes in the room, you stand up and offer her your chair. When you walk on the street, you make sure you as the man are on the street side to protect her from any danger. That's the way I was raised. What I was hearing from Anthony Mackie rang so true and reminiscent of that. We need more of that, because I can't count. And I know Marcus experiences when you go to a movie, you go to some sort of public place and you see young people just what I call acting a fool. It's like, I'd love to smack the crap out of them. Legally, I can't do it, but I know that my father would have if he happened upon them and I was a part of that bunch of people. Because my father would beat my ass, if only because he was trying to protect me from either jail or the morgue. Because I couldn't process consequences on that level with my limited understanding as a child. And he would rather me be afraid of him and his consequences than having the world teach me. That's what I hear in Anthony Mackie.
Yeah.
Has masculinity, though, really been under attack all this time? I don't know about that. And I think a lot of people I found recently are confusing masculinity with, say, the ability to work on your own car, when it's really more about intelligence, honor, decency, and kindness.
I thought he defined it very well, because he put masculinity within the context of how they treat their mother. Masculinity within the context of
protecting the home. Of being responsible, of being respectful when you are interacting with people.
Yeah, it gave me a real flashback to when I was a kid. I grew up without a father, and I recall being in line with my grandmother, and I was wising off to her, and some guy behind us in line gave me a smack. It's like, don't talk to her that way.
Yes.
And at the time, I was like, who the hell is this? But
you
now,
could do that back then.
But now, I think he was totally justified.
And I think that's what he is addressing when he says masculinity. I know that when some hear that, they think it's all about, beating a woman over her head and dragging her into the house.
Sexuality.
Or sexuality, something like that. That's not masculinity. He is describing the things that you should embody as a man. Just when you come into a room, you should take your hat off. If you're at dinner or if you're at church or things like that, you should do those things. And I see people just chilling, at a restaurant with a cap on, and I'm like, at the table, and I'm like, man.
Let alone a backward cap, no less.
Yes, like
My
even
father would
dumber.
smack the stuffing out of me if I came in with a hat indoors at a restaurant.
That's like one of those things you say to yourself, where is your upbringing? Just the simple fact, to me, masculinity should be that you are respecting yourself enough to know you don't have to walk around with your butt hanging out of your pants.
Preach.
That is a problem. That is a lack of masculinity. Where is your upbringing when you think that that's okay to go outside? That is what we are addressing. There's a lack of that.
Oh, I agree with that. And I think it's funny how you're treated like a dinosaur sometimes. If you open a door for a woman, they tend not to expect it at this point. I love all that stuff.
I will, when I come in downstairs, I don't care if I see a woman coming off of the elevator,
I'll
way
wait.
back at the, I will
wait.
open
Yep.
the door and wait. And they will look like, thank you. I said, no, thank you. And that is it. I told my son before one time when he was really young, he ran and he opened the door for a young lady and she went through and she did not say thank you. And he was all, hurt about that. He was like, Daddy, I opened the door and she didn't say thank you. I said, you do not open the door to be thanked. You open the door because it's the right thing to do. That is why.
Yeah, you don't do an act of kindness with the expectation of a reward or recognition. You just do it because that's what should be done.
And that is the teachings of masculinity. That is what should be passed down, which is what Anthony Mackie is passing down on his sons. And I just don't know if enough of that is being passed down.
I know.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm saying I know there is. We got to go to a break, but we have time to talk about this in the next segment. There's more to be said, more to be discussed. But you know what? Anthony Mackie is good with me. If he comes out with another movie, I'm going to be there regardless, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Because for me, that is a role model.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Later.
KFI, Mr. Mo Kelly, live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. I was talking about Anthony Mackie, the star of Captain America, Brave New World, and how his approach to raising his four sons, for me, was very refreshing. Got to hear a side of him that I'd never heard before, never knew about him before. And he was just in a conversation on the Pivot podcast, which is the product of Ryan Clark, who's an NFL personality. And it was kind of like a barbershop situation. Guys sitting around talking, shooting the stuff. It went in some very funny, inappropriate places, and also it went very serious places. But there was something else I wanted to play. So if you get a chance to check out the fullness of the interview, it's more than an hour. I just picked a couple of clips out that I really enjoyed. I think learned something about Anthony Mackie, the actor and person. Last segment, it was the person. Now, this is Anthony Mackie, the actor. He was asked about how he goes about creating longevity in the business.
Like my boys have never.
Well, I'm sorry. That's the wrong one. Here we go.
How do you create longevity then?
By diversifying your portfolio. I mean, my problem now is this. I'm 46 years old, so I want to get into producing. I want to start curating the Anthony Mackie experience. Tyler Perry has shown us the mold.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get this motherfucker enough respect. What you think about his projects or whatever, this motherfucker has created the wheel, so it don't make sense for me to get a chisel and try to make another one. Like, the brilliance and the ingenuity in which he's executed this business is phenomenal. And we have to acknowledge that. No one else has been able to do that. He makes more money than most studios, right? So you have to curate your experience. Captain America was an Anthony Mackie curated experience because I produced it. Everything. I had a say on all that. Once you curate that experience, you start to put yourself in a position where people know what to expect of you. Every time you see a Tom Cruise movie, that's a curated Tom Cruise experience. Will Smith used to be a curated Will Smith. You knew what you were getting. So at this point in my career, because as men, your golden window is 35 to 60. Like, you look at Denzel, you can still play Loverboy at 60. You can still do action. Liam Neeson, 115 years old.
Hey, Tom on another mission soon.
Yo,
Yeah.
that motherfucker 80 years old.
Liam Neeson's daughter need to keep her ass in the house. She keep going over there
I
to
swear to
Bulgaria.
God, sit your ass down. When you look at these cats, you make your money from 35 to 60. That's when you have enough years in the business where people trust you and they know what's coming with you. So that way they can say, let's do this. Because I always thought I would be a dramatic actor. I always thought I would be the actor, sitting in there crying about my kid dying, or some World War II like Denzel, right? But I've realized now that I'm more of a action star. And I think a lot of it came from, playing football and the athletics that I did. But my career now is based upon my athleticism.
This is the difference why I think award shows are not as important. Because award shows back in the day, to slightly digress, that's about the only time you would see these people. You have these 2-minute interviews on the red carpet and you learn nothing about them. Whereas now in the podcast space, I felt like I kind of learned something about him as a person, as a man, as a father. And I felt as if I were a part of the conversation.
Yeah, I think that in general, there are so many different podcasts that I follow and I'll listen to just because I want to hear something different than what's normally out there. And something like this. This is one of those conversations that sometimes I'll come across if I'll see a clip on social media and I'll go and try to find the full length conversation, because this is how we learn more about the people. Like we always say, we don't know these people. This is us learning more about this person and where this person stands. And I think that this level of vulnerability that different conversations like this allow is what brings us closer into Hollywood.
Something else I noticed. This is a Marvel leading man who's been obviously given a lot of freedom to express himself in a colorful way in many ways. I don't know if that was the case maybe 5 years ago with Marvel.
Yeah. They were a little tight on how people could say anything about what they're doing, about their role and stuff. They were really like, loose lips will sink your entire ship. Yeah. And they didn't allow it. They had to approve interviews. We know from talking to individuals.
We talked to one of the writers of this movie.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I forgot about that.
I didn't.
Yes. Talk to and the Marvel rep, the Disney rep was on the call
line
with you.
That's right.
And actually afterwards said, hey, can you go back and cut that because he wasn't supposed to say that. And
Yep.
I know you guys got comfortable, but can you remove that from the conversation?
Yeah, because the writer said a little too much.
Yeah.
And what was I supposed to do? Stop him? And we were asking, among other things, specifically about what would be this movie, Captain America 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
We specifically asked about that. We asked about Steve Rogers, whether he was still alive, where he might be. And there's a little too much information that was given at that time. Let me come back to you, Mark, because I know you might have had some other thoughts about the whole masculinity discussion we had last segment.
Well, I get triggered by this because I've seen so many online dimwits proclaiming themselves alpha males when no alpha male who's ever lived has described himself that way. So we might be talking about two different things here.
Oh, absolutely.
You're talking about sort of old school behavior, which I 100% agree with. And I mentioned, being a man has nothing to do with, I don't know, owning a truck or guns or any of that superficial stuff. It's all about honor and decency and kindness and intelligence. And I don't see enough of that. I mean, I don't have any problem with anything Anthony Mackie just said, except for referring to himself in the third person. Well, that's a little weird to me.
Unfortunately, a lot of people interpret the word masculinity with the modifier of toxic masculinity. So it takes on, it's a loaded word in today's world when 5-10 years ago it wasn't. And no, you don't have to proclaim that you're a man, not if you're actually a man.
No, and there are some pieces of terminology that just cause people to tune out right away, like toxic masculinity. No, like I was in a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago who we agreed on everything, and the person said something about the patriarchy, and I'm like, okay, I'm out. That's it.
The buzzword. The patriarchy.
Yeah, I think they kind of reduce thoughtful discussions and debates and arguments to a series of catchphrases and buzzwords, and it winds up becoming kind of meaningless.
It's a dead giveaway.
And off-putting.
Really the moment I hear the buzzwords, it's not only is it off-putting, I usually eject because you have been reciting and repeating that which you heard and cannot adequately express on your own because you can't even find the words to articulate what you want me to understand. And the best you can do is reach for someone others coined term that you heard or watched on TV.
Yeah, I mean, those things can be useful shorthand, and they allow us to communicate, complicated things in a few words, but learn some new ones after you're done with grad school in the 90s, okay?
Well, that's assuming they went to grad school.
Well, yeah, and I'm not saying that as a mark of quality either. There's good and bad to that. I can say that having been there. But the whole conversation about masculinity, there's a lot of just absolute boobs online. Like, I think of comedians who pass off being knuckleheads as average man stuff. And I'm like, no, you just want an excuse to be a bigot and a lowbrow, and you're not even funny.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a good point, because a lot of the stuff that he was talking about, I didn't necessarily associate with masculinity. I associated that with being like courteous and having
decency. Yeah.
And I like the fact that he is trying to realign masculinity away from the toxic thing and trying to realign it back to honor, decency, courtesy, things like that. That's cool.
Protection of womanhood.
Yeah.
That's just how I was raised. And I don't know if I fully agree with his premise, and I would want to ask him more about how we're trying to, or this country's trying to destroy masculinity. I would want to probe that further. I think I know what he's getting at, but I don't want to presume to know. But I don't have any disagreement with what he said. And I know some will misinterpret it, and that's okay. Because if you're actually a man, you're not going to worry about that. You can work your way through it.
No, I think after this talk, we all need to go and have a sauna together.
Butt ass naked.
That's exactly right. Real men don't use towels in the sauna.
KFI AM 640. Just had to make it weird. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. We have some movie and TV news that you might be interested in when we come back, if you don't just turn off the radio altogether because of Mark Ronner.
Why would you do that?
Because that's a visual nobody asked for, nobody wanted.
That's toxic of you.
Call back.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Okay, I've never watched Ted Lasso. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm just being honest. And a lot of people clown me for that. I only got so much time in the world, and I prefer movies over TV shows. Like, for example, when I was watching The Electric Slate last night, it was easy to just eject and not feel that I had to watch a season of this or a season of that. I've heard nothing but great things about Ted Lasso. I just haven't gotten into it yet. I still have an Apple TV subscription, or is it on Prime? It's on one of them, but I got the subscription. I'll eventually get there. It took me 4 years to get to Game of Thrones, but I eventually got there. I still haven't gotten to Breaking Bad.
I was the same way. And did you say Electric Slate?
Whatever it is. State,
yeah, okay.
Slate,
all right.
Electric Slide, whatever.
Sure,
okay?
Sure.
It's all the same.
It doesn't deserve the respect of a proper title.
No. Oh, and also got a Instagram message at Mr. Mo Kelly from a listener, OC Life, OCLYF. He says we should call it a dysfortune cookie.
Oh,
I like that.
That's dope.
Dysfortune cookie, and have the messages obviously consistent with our collective or individual dysfortune.
Wow.
Works for me.
Now someone's going to go ahead and trademark it and make all the money, but I felt the need to at least acknowledge it. It was pretty witty, pretty damn witty.
We can't do like a radio copyright on that?
No, you can't do that.
We said it here first?
You can say it here first, but you can't prove that you actually copyrighted it first. Yeah. Sorry. That's the way it goes. But back to Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso season 4 officially is a go with Jason Sudeikis. And hopefully I'll get to it by season 6.
I know people rave about the show, and I'm surprised because you do watch a lot of these shows that I've never seen ever before. Like you watched the one about the oil empire.
Landman.
Yeah, that one. You watched the one about the news empire.
Succession.
Yeah, you watched that one. You watch these shows.
And Succession, I picked up in the last season. I started binge watching from the beginning. So that's kind of my
gotcha. Okay,
pattern.
So Landman
was Landman was new, and the only reason I got on that was because it's the same creator as Lioness and Yellowstone, and those are things where, Taylor Sheridan, where it's like, okay, I like how he makes TV shows, so I was comfortable with trying a new one. It had Billy Bob Thornton, who's hilarious and absolutely hilarious, and it was worth the time. And whether it gets picked up or not, the way they did the first season, it was complete enough where I'd be okay if they didn't bring it back. They tied up a lot of storylines. You can kind of figure out where the story goes, even though it may not be on TV.
I think Foosh is a big fan of Ted Lasso. I've never watched it, though. I don't know what it's about.
It's a good show. It's about an American who has no experience with soccer, who becomes a soccer coach in England. And I think it became the kind of hit that it was when it first started because people were starved for some portrayal of decency and kindness on TV.
Did it start during the pandemic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so people had time to watch.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
And beyond that, Starship Troopers.
Yes.
A reboot, remake, something has been confirmed.
Favorite sci-fi films.
Really?
I love Stars. I love how cynical and how poignantly it paints this dysfunctional picture of America, of the
military
industrial complex, of even low key Nazism. I mean, there's so much in this film that I'm just like, I love watching it because of its overreach.
Mark, is it fair to say that it's Orwellian almost?
I don't know, but it does satirize, the whole USA kind of jingoism and our love of war. And it's the kind of film that only an outsider could do. I forget where Paul Verhoeven is from. Is he Dutch or something? I'll look him up.
I believe Verhoeven with the Vin.
Yeah, I'll look him up.
As opposed to verboten.
Yeah, he's Dutch.
Oh, so the Dutch, they know how to poke fun at America.
Yeah, he's Dutch. Yeah. Still alive, too. 86.
I wonder if he's going to have a role in this reboot. I'm there for it. I really, really enjoy Starship Troopers. I actually own the VHS. I have not moved up to the DVD.
Now, it's going to be done by Neil Blomkamp.
Yes.
And my only reservation is I've never been a real big fan of his movies. District 9 missed the mark with me. Chappie definitely missed the mark with me.
Chappie was really irritating.
I didn't mind Elysium. I would err on the side of it being good. Not great, but good.
Oh, man, I really, really like it. Some District 9 to me was phenomenal. Love District 9. Elysium, great. I watched Elysium just the other day. And you know what's funny? I was here late one night and it was on, and I tried to tell Mark to get on watch it because it was on. He's like, I never saw it before.
Wait, you never seen Elysium?
I watched it on Tawala Say So, and I liked it. But the thing about Neil Blomkamp is that after District 9, it was like, oh, this guy's got potential, and I still don't think we've seen that potential. We know he was going to make an Alien movie, and that got scrapped. So I'm anxious to see what he does with this.
For people who don't know, there are a lot of movies that Mark has not seen. He came in tonight and said, Mo, I finally have seen Harlem Nights.
Yeah, only, 40 years too late.
Oh, my God.
In 1989. If you don't know Harlem Nights, it stars and directed by Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Della Reese, Arsenio Hall, the late Robin Harris. Most of that cast, unfortunately, is passed on now. But it was a great assortment of comedians that you would never see again. It's not a great movie.
That was like a Black Justice League. I loved it.
It was funny.
I loved that you get Richard Pryor and who's the
Red Fox.
Red Fox in the same movie. And Fox only died a couple of years after that movie was made.
Yeah, 91 if I'm not mistaken. And we talked about this, Mark. Richard Pryor plays it straight. He's not trying to be funny in that movie.
Yeah,
he is the guiding force for Eddie Murphy's character.
He looks very fragile in the movie, but I love the father-son relationship with him and Eddie Murphy, kind of an adoptive father and son. Can't believe I'd never seen it. I was busy the year it came out. I don't know what I was doing.
And you know who was also great in it, even though he's not part of the principal cast? Danny Aiello.
He's a good heel.
He's really good in this movie.
Yeah.
And his comedic timing is pretty good as well. You would never think it given that cast, but he was really good in the movie.
As Arsenio, everyone in this film was great. Della Reese
was so funny.
Shoot me in my pinky toe.
I told Mo that I'm going to be walking around for weeks shouting at people, "Kiss my entire ass."
Now, if you listen to the show, I'm telling you right now, this is going to be in Name That Movie Cult Classic on Friday. I'm telling you in advance.
It has to be.
And if you don't know the movie and you can't figure it out, that's a you problem. I'm telling you one of the 10 right now.
Oh, you about to get
Stan Shaw.
Stan Shaw. He's still alive.
I've seen that guy in a million things, and mostly on TV, and I never knew who he was until I looked him up after the movie.
He's played a boxer more than a few times.
Oh, I'm sure. Tons of people in it that became really well known later on, too. So, man, that was some great unfinished business.
Charlie Murphy.
I was happy to discover that it's streaming on Paramount Plus.
I was saying that since Mark is officially half black, it's kind of a requirement.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen movies like Coming to America or Harlem Nights, they're not going to let you in the barbershop. You're not allowed to come to the cookout. You got to see those movies.
What are the movies that will bar me from ever having to eat chitlins?
There are no movies.
Because that's not going to happen.
I don't know if there's a chitlin barring. There's no level that bars you from eating chitlins.
So that's just up to me.
I didn't say you had to like them. I'm just saying it's a rite of passage. It's something that I had to deal with. And look, we're not saying you have to clean them. It's not like you have to smell them. We're just saying you just have to eat a little bit of one.
The half white side of me, which is the upper half. That's how it says we won't be having chitlins anytime soon.
You know what's interesting though is quite possibly, and I wish Nick Paliocchini was here, because the restaurant that he was going to get them from, their main customer base is actually your upper half.
That's not uncommon with a lot of soul food places.
Yes.
Like you would go to Aunt Kizzy's back porch when it was in the marina. It was mostly white establishment.
Hardly any black people in there.
Yeah.
A lot of yuppie thrill seekers. I am not down with this.
Possibly.
Negatory.
You get a taste of that cuisine without having to worry about all that other stuff.
I'd rather have you shoot off my pinky toe.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
My final thought is going to be about crime. I had some thoughts earlier in the show. I said the first word was going to be Mayor Karen Bass, as she was releasing some of the crime stats and how they were, at least on the surface, positive or moving in the right direction. And I just want to offer just a little bit more perspective before the night is through. And it's not that I'm against her offering the crime stats, and there's no need to go over them again. And yes, the numbers were positive relative to 2023, and improvement is that improvement. I'll take it. Better is better. I'm not going to quibble about that. But by saying something is better, there also needs to be context, a point of reference. The easy response, or at least I call it easy, to any crime stat is pointing out the obvious, that crime stats only reflect crimes which have actually been reported. And that's in the past. That has nothing to do with the present or the future. It's not some sort of force field protection for the future. And since we know that crime stats are always relative to crime actually reported, and it's true for all crime stats, not just these crime stats. So let's not get bent out of shape or act like these today are somehow different just because they're positive. We can't just dismiss them out of hand. Let's be fair here. We're not going to say just because they're positive, well, they're fake. No, I'm not going to do that. Fewer murders and less violent crime, always good things. Let's agree on that. But let's not oversell it either. The real discussion is whether this is going to be a larger trend or just a temporary fluctuation. Liable to increase again next year. That's my question. Crime is a fickle thing. It depends largely on the willingness of people to follow or break the law. We as people have more influence on crime than actual law enforcement, and that has always been true. Something else about crime and safety. Safety is not, has not, and will not ever be connected to raw stats. You can tell me that murders are down 10%, and that really doesn't mean a damn thing in our everyday lives. Crime stats are not a predictor of the future. I will say it again and again and again. It's only a reference to the past. Murders being down 10% or whatever number doesn't make me, you, or your family feel any safer. And this is definitely about feelings. Nobody's going to walk outside and say, damn, I feel 10% safer, or I feel 10% less likely to be murdered today. How about that? Because safety begins and ends with feelings. And safety is about trust. You know, I don't like to fly. And there are no stats that you can give me about flying being the safest way to travel, which is going to impact that fear. So you can save your breath. You just have to make me feel safe. That's all you can do. Here's another example. And Mark Runner knows what I'm talking about. Mark and I have a shared dislike and apprehension of going to the dentist. The reason I am with my dentist right now is because he goes over and above to demonstrate he understands and relates to my fear. Doesn't talk down to me. Doesn't tell me why it's supposedly an irrational fear. Mayor Bass could learn something from that because she made no attempt to connect with us or demonstrated that she personally has the same safety concerns that the rest of us do collectively. Safety is 100% personal. Mayor Bass could announce that there were 0 murders next year and 0 property crime. But if you and I can't feel it, it means nothing. And I'm not going to change my behavior as to riding Metro, getting gas, buying groceries, walking my dogs because crime is down. That press conference today felt like it was coming from someone who did not share or understand my concerns, does not have to make those same choices, not make the same considerations, and ultimately does not have the same skin in the game as I do, as you do. And this is less about Mayor Bass because crime is not limited to the borders of L.A. City. Crime being down in the city of L.A. has 0 to do with crime in unincorporated L.A. and L.A. County. It's bigger than any boundary, and nobody drives from Gardena to L.A. or vice versa and thinks all of a sudden, oh my gosh, my safety quotient has changed. I guess it comes down to this as I close. People will not feel any differently about crime or whether it's going up or down until we feel that those elected to address it have to worry about it too, have the same concerns as you and I do. Because until that changes, the stats will never matter, whether we believe them or not. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly.
Well, at least you've decided to listen to KFI. See, you're making progress.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live.